It has started snowing again. We have 2 feet of snow, and it has started snowing again. They're calling for another 10 centimeters, or 3 inches for those of you on imperial measurements right now. Yes, it is the great snow-in of 2017, meaning that this channel has officially made me more money than work has this week. It's not a good thing. So what I did today was I was thinking about upcoming playoffs and past playoffs and how we've been talking a lot about the greatest of all time, the 100 greatest of all time. So I thought, okay, clutch players. And again, I did what I did during the summer. During the summer, I did videos where I discussed who I thought the best forwards, defensemen, and goaltenders were, who I had seen. So I'm not talking about anybody from the 70s, 60s, 50s, previous to that, because I didn't watch it, so I can't say. And then it gets into some ugly territory there. So I'm only going to look at, and I'm basing it on, I watched the Stanley Cup final in 1981, and then I didn't watch much hockey till the Stanley Cup's playoffs of 82 with the Canucks. I'm guessing I watched some regular season games for the Canucks during 82. I don't think I watched very many, but the playoffs was fun because Vancouver never won anything before, so it was kind of fun. So what I've done is I've come up with a top 10 list of key clutch scorers for Vancouver, Boston, and Dallas / Minnesota, so including the Minnesota North Stars, and top 10 goaltenders. And with the goaltenders, because for clutch goaltenders during my lifetime, there hasn't been enough between Vancouver, Boston, and Dallas to do a top 10 list for those 3 teams. So I've compiled my top 10 list for those 3 teams combined. And again, this is based on my observations as a fan of each team. And then after I get through these lists, I'll get into the top 10 goaltenders and top 10 goal scorers that I would want in a Game 7. So this is, if it's a Game 7 situation, who do I want to play? So top 10 goaltenders. So top 10 clutch Game 7. It's Game 7. I could put any goaltender from the era I've watched for Dallas / Minnesota, the Minnesota North Stars, Boston, or Vancouver. Number 10, Marty Terkel. Now, before everybody starts laughing, I know Marty Terkel didn't have a tremendous playoff record, but it was the team that he was in front of. The Dallas Stars were on their way down, and the Cup final of '99 really gutted them in terms of their young guys. It was well publicized that they traded away Jerome McGinley to get Joe Nieuwendyk. Nieuwendyk was gone pretty early in the 2000s, and so Dallas really didn't have fantastic offense in terms of their team, and they had to rely a lot on Turco. Turco had some rough outings, but in a Game 7 situation, I would still prefer Turco over some of the other options. So you're not going to see Antti Niemi or Kari Lehtinen on this list. Number 9, Corey Schneider in Vancouver. Schneider never had a chance to play a Game 7 as a Canuck. He obviously hasn't played a Game 7 as a New Jersey Devil, but he is a fantastic goaltender. And I do believe that if he'd played a Game 7 for the Canucks, I think he would have accounted himself very well. Number 8 is Richard Byrd in Vancouver. Now, why is Byrd 8th on the list? Well, because outside of the 82 Cup run, he didn't do a lot in the playoffs. The 82 Cup run was key, and it was the only key to his career and to his longevity as a Vancouver Canucks starting goaltender. Number 7, John Casey. So I put Minnesota for this one. John Casey, the 91 Cup run, it was overshadowed obviously by the famous Mario Lemieux goal where he undressed the entire Minnesota North Stars team and then went around John Casey. Casey played as well as any goaltender could against Mario Lemieux in his prime. Lemieux was bound and determined to win a Stanley Cup in 91, and nothing was going to stop him. And John Casey's really solid run in 91 got overshadowed, and rightfully so, by Mario Lemieux finally hoisting the cup. Number 6, I have Roberto Luongo. Stop. If you're a Blackhawks fan and you're laughing, stop. Luongo made it to one Game 7 against Chicago, and he beat them. He wasn't so good in Game 6s, and Chicago got to him quite a bit. And I know Game 7 against Bruins, he didn't put in the greatest performance, but the entire Canucks team fell apart there. So there you Tuukka Rask comes in at number 5 on this list. Rask, again, hasn't had a cup win, but he's been on a team that had that cup win. And in 2013, he got the Bruins to the Stanley Cup final. So that's key to me. He has been a really key goaltender. I think he's overworked this year, and I think he's hurt. But we'll find out at the end of the year whether I'm right or I'm wrong. Number 4, I have Andy Moog in Boston. So Moog is a guy who got the Bruins to the Cup in 88 and 90, and they couldn't win the final because they were against some team named the Oilers. 90 was the one that really hurt, because I felt like Moog and the Bruins were really at the top of their game that year, and they just ran out of gas against the Oilers. So it was too bad. Number 3, I have Kurt McLean. Remember 94? Yeah, I remember McLean in 94. But I remember McLean playing well in 92 and 93 in the playoffs as well. So McLean had 3 really good years there. And then it sort of fell apart after 94, but he was so good in 94. He was a fantastic playoff goalie. That's why I've got him listed higher than Luongo. And I've said in other videos, Luongo's bar none the best goaltender the Canucks have ever had. And I stand by that. But in a Game 7 situation with them in their prime, I'm taking Kirk McLean. Absolutely taking Kirk McLean. Number 2, Ed Belfour in Dallas. Never cared much for the guy personally, but Belfour, you know, as a goaltender in the playoffs, he was able to turn it on. He did as a rookie for the Chicago Blackhawks, and then managed to replicate that magic in Dallas, and he was able to bring competent goaltending to Toronto in the playoffs as well after he left Dallas. Numerous times he was left for dead by Chicago, San Jose, Dallas, and then resurrected himself in Toronto, and then almost did it again in Florida. So, Belfour, full credit to the guy, whether I liked him personally or not, and I didn't. And the number 1 goaltender, that's a Game 7 situation. The number 1 goaltender I'm putting in there is Tim Thomas. So again, this isn't about personal issues. And again, you'll notice Luongo was 6th on this list. Thomas is number 1. There's a reason. Tim Thomas was a goaltender that Boston over and over and over again underestimated. Left him buried him in the minors. They kept trying to replace him. I kept reading in magazines about how Thomas was the starter, but Boston was looking for an upgrade in that, and I could never understand that. Never understood that at all. So there's from my 3 teams. So what I'll do now, I'm going to do the top 10 if I had a Game 7 goaltender from any goaltender that I've watched. So, and I'm gonna get honorable mentions out of the way. Corey Crawford gets an honorable mention out of Chicago. Carey Price gets an honorable mention out of Montreal, even though he hasn't won a cup. And Curtis Joseph gets an honorable mention because you look at Stanley Cup records, and Cujo is there. He just didn't win a cup. So he got a lot of shutouts. He played a lot of games. He got a lot of wins. But that's because he had a nice long career, and he was always a starting goaltender. He was very solid, and it's not his fault that he didn't play for a Stanley Cup winner. But it hurts his standing. You know, when you look back at his career, that he never got to hold the cup. So my top 10 goaltenders, again, this is Game 7 in the year of hockey I've watched for the last 36 years. Number 10, Mike Verdun. Whether in Calgary or in Detroit, Mike Verdun showed that he is a playoff goaltender. And anybody who says Mike Verdun wasn't that great, you didn't see him in 1989 when he robbed the Canucks. And the last Stanley Cup he won in Detroit, he was a key member of that team. It's easy to look at Detroit and say, well, they always won despite their goaltending. That was an exception. And Detroit, actually, their goaltending was usually pretty good. I almost gave an honorable mention to Osgood, but there were too many years where he just didn't seem to be with it, and he could never do anything outside Detroit in the playoffs. So I didn't give Osgood an honorable, but I think I just did by mentioning him. So there you go. Number 9, Tom Brassell. An example that you don't have to be a nice guy or well-liked to be on my list. Brassell, prick, but he was a prick who won a lot of games. and he won a couple of Stanley Cups along the way. And he played a large role for the Penguins in the early 90s. Again, you can get caught up in the Lemieux and Yager talk, but man, Brassell was solid for them in net. Frank Pietrangelo came in and played relatively well as a reliever when Brassell got hurt at one point, but it was still Brassell's show. Number 8, Ed Belfour. I went over this. Number 7, Tim Thomas. I went over this. Why is Thomas at 7? Because Thomas, despite having done it in 2011, his Stanley Cup appearances before and after were not always great. And before that Stanley Cup final, before he got a shutout in Game 7 against Tampa, he was looking shaky that year. So even in 2011, and I know everybody remembers what a great performance he had, I remember some shaky games. I remember thinking, wait, is Timmy losing it here? And there's just 6 goaltenders that I feel are above him in terms of if I was going to have a Game 7 goaltender, who would I put in there? So number 6 is Grant Fuhr. Grant Fuhr's stats are hurt by the fact he played in the 80s. Goaltenders are short, equipment is small, and defense doesn't exist. There is no defense back in the 80s. So Grant Fuhr gets 6th spot because he managed to make some key saves for an Edmonton team that didn't know where its own net was. Number 5, I got Marty Byrd. Byrd's in 5th because New Jersey's defensive structure got him Stanley Cups, but he's still in 5th because he managed to win Stanley Cups. So it's one of those situations. Number 4, Billy Smith. 4 straight Stanley Cups. And Billy Smith was, for me, the biggest badass in net that I ever saw. Like, you didn't go near his net or you got chopped down. Hextall is best known for that, but I'm telling you, Billy Smith was nasty. Absolutely nasty in the net. Great guy off the ice. I've never seen an interview with him where he wasn't a perfectly nice guy, but man, on the ice, you went anywhere near his net, you were done. You went near the blue paint, you were done. Get ready to get chopped down. Number 3, I have Jonathan Quick. Quick's a tough one because, he won that first cup. Basically, he dragged the Kings to that first cup. The second cup, he didn't play great, but the Kings bailed him out a few times. But he does have 2 Stanley Cups. And he has proven that when he gets hot, he can put a team on his back and take him to the promised land. And he's still got a career left. He's been injured a lot of this year, and he'll kind of get forgotten. And, obviously there's going to be some debate about having been out this long and an injury this major. How's he going to be when he comes back? But if anybody can put it back together, it's Quick. Number 2, I have the Dominator. Dominik Hasek won a Stanley Cup as a member of the Detroit Red Wings, but that's not what made him great. What made him great was taking mediocre Buffalo teams, making them great, making them believe they were world beaters because Dominik Hasek was their goaltender. And Hasek, to this day, the guy is a legend and proves that the win totals that a goaltender gets in his career don't tell the whole story. Hasek was fantastic. It's a shame he didn't play in the NHL right from when he was 19. It's a shame that Mike Keenan didn't see just what he had in Hasek and played Belfour instead. As great as Belfour is, one of the top 10 in wins in the NHL in history, Hasek was a better goaltender. And in the playoffs, he was fantastic. And he showed glimpses of that in 92 when he was brought in relief against the Penguins. Even though he was allowing goals, he came out to the blue line and poke-checked. I'm pretty sure that was Lemieux that he poke-checked. And it really caught everybody's eye. Like, wait, what did he just do there? And it was a glimpse of what Hasek's career was going to be defined by. His absolute unorthodox play and nobody knowing what the hell the book was going to be on him, which Tim Thomas also had going for him. So number 1, no surprise, I'm wearing Montreal. It's Patrick Roy. Patrick Roy, there's no goalie I've ever seen who in a Game 7 situation I've gone, it's Patrick Roy. I want to believe in my team, but man, they got to beat Roy. I think part of the reason this list exists today is because of yesterday's Super Bowl win for the Patriots. And the fact that Tom Brady is the greatest of all time in terms of quarterbacks. And in a key game, you have Tom Brady as your quarterback, you're going to win. Patrick Roy was that in goal. Absolutely that in goal. So in terms of the greatest of all time I've seen, if I'm going to have a Game 7 goaltender and they're all in their prime and everything's left equal, Patrick Roy is the one I'm tapping on the shoulder and saying, you're my starter. And Hasek makes a pretty decent backup to Patrick Roy. So Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Again, this is just from 1981 until now. And, you know, my list is not going to match up with anybody else's. I know that. I went through this over the summer. But it's fun to look at this stuff. So let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're just browsing your way through. And I'm going to split this up. I'm going to do the goal scorers next. So I'm going to upload this. And while I'm uploading this, I'm going to do a video on the greatest goal scorers in a Game 7. If I'm going to have anybody to score that goal in overtime, who am I picking from Dallas / Minnesota, Boston, Vancouver, and then overall for the entire NHL in the time I've been watching it. And you guys can predict on the goalie video who you think is going to be my number ones on those lists. And you'll see if you're right or not when I post that. Thanks for watching.